Yo, what is going on, guys? This is Kavoda here, and today I wanted to bring you a little video on the new Caliban. So I've seen a lot of videos and builds on his lethal progeny, doing most of the damage, basically buffing his little summons. I'm a fan of weapons platform builds, or weapon buff builds, whatever you want to call them. And I've found a pretty easy and simple way to set him up as a weapons buff build. And truthfully, when it comes to survivability and just what you have to put into the build to actually get a really good buff out of him, it's not much. I know the Saren build that I released previously was super dependent on the Arcanes and combat discipline and the Archon Shards for survivability and actually, being able to run around and consistently do that damage. But not with Caliban. Really all you need with Caliban is just some basic mods, maybe a couple Archon Shards if you really need them, and a couple Arcanes. Nothing is too essential here. As long as you're able to put one Helminth ability on him, you're pretty much good to go. But obviously with all things, there is going to be a best setup possible. So let me actually get into that. I want to start with talking about the abilities. So for his first one, he has the ability where he spins around super quick, you get energy back for every enemy that you hit with it. That is the one that I use the Helminth for. And I put Nourish in that slot, reason being you get a damage buff with Nourish, and also you get a little bit of an energy regen buff with Nourish, and his efficiency with this build is going to be absolutely horrendous, so if you're able to keep your energy up, that is going to be a way better option than something like Roar. So and then his second ability here, Sentient Wrath, basically you stomp the ground, you elevate enemies in the air, get a little bit of a damage bonus on lifted enemies. This is going to be the other ability that you're kind of spamming to, get those damage bonuses. And this is the reason we kind of want to squeeze as much energy regen or efficiency we can out of certain things. And then so his third ability, Lethal Progeny, this is actually an interesting one because this is where a lot of builds go for the Ortholist and kind of let the minions do all the work. So for this build, it actually makes more sense to summon the Coralists, and their whole job is going to be to make sure your shields don't drain. As long as you have these Coralists up, it's almost impossible for your shields to drain completely. They're great for survivability, and they are what I personally prefer running with this build, given all of these summons do give you some sort of shield regen, so you could run the Ortholist or the Conculist. It really depends on what your playstyle is and what your preference is, but I think if you're going for a weapons build mainly, the Coralists are going to be your best bet. And the last ability, this isn't really going to be an ability you spam, but this is a 100% armor strip ability. With this setup, it is 125 energy drain on each use, so I wouldn't recommend spamming it. I generally use this when you get the invaders spawning in, or if there's, just some particular Eximus unit that's kind of being a pain in the ass, you can just pop this, strip all their armor, and it's usually a lot easier to get the kill. So as far as playstyle goes, really all you're going to be doing is keeping your Nourish and your Coralists up at all times, so recast those when they run out, and then you're going to run around, pop Sentient Wrath when you come across a large group of enemies. It's going to make it way easier to kill them, especially if you're using something like the Acu Core, which check out the previous video for an Acu Core build. At the end of the video here, I am going to be suggesting some weapons that I find work best with this, but this ability is going to be a cast on enemies when needed. And then, like I said, Fusion Strike. Really only cast against tougher enemies, otherwise it's going to be a big waste of energy. So now let's actually talk about the mod build in Arcanes on Caliban. Like I said, this is a very simplistic mod setup. I have Dreamer's Bond and Redirection for a little bit of extra, shield and shield regen. Obviously, the more shields you're able to get on this build, the better, because then your summons have more shield to regen. It's going to be a lot harder for enemies to eat through those. So you could even throw Primed Redirection on here if you have it. And then obviously we have Primed Flow and Equilibrium for energy, Power Drift, Blind Rage, and Transient Fortitude for strength, Archon Continuity for duration. And the reason I use Archon Continuity is actually, if you didn't know, Archon Continuity and primed continuity have the exact same duration bonus, Archon continuity costing 2 more capacity than prime does, and it is significantly easier and cheaper to get. Then we got streamline for a little bit of efficiency back and stretch to help out with range a bit. Then for the arcanes, I threw mold augmented on. This is a pretty common one. And then actually for the second arcane, I put arcane resistance on. What this is going to do is give you a little bit of resistance to those toxin effects, because obviously with a shield build, the only thing that can really kill you is if you get one of those annoying toxin clouds or something like that when you're fighting the infested and they eat through your health. This is to try and prevent against that a little bit more. And that's really all there is to the build. But one more thing, just want to talk about the Archon Shards real quick. I recommend personally running 2 casting speed, yellow shards, and then the rest, if you have Tau Forged Red or regular red, whatever you have, I would put on duration. And then for the last part of the video, like I said, I just wanted to put out some weapon suggestions, what I've found works well with this build. So for this, I'm just going to be throwing up some builds real quick on screen, listing off the weapons. So for the primaries to start off with, I like using the Burstin, Prime, and Karnan. Obviously, this is a really popular one for almost any frame. Next up, we got the Godfa. Ever since this came back and you could pick it up from the Baroka tier, I've been messing around with builds. I found this thing actually really useful. Next up, Exultra is really fun to use. There is a little bit of knockback on this, so maybe use something like Primed Sure-Footed if you are going to be running the Exultra. If you get too close, you can definitely knock yourself down, stagger yourself. So just keep that in mind with this gun. Then we got the Phantasma. This thing, in my opinion, is actually an absolute sleeper of primary weapons. I love using the Phantasma. And then for the secondary / melee slots, these are some combos that I use because I'm not much of a melee player myself. So I generally run either an Ocucore with a Firax Wraith for the fire rate bonus to pistols. This is one of the Ocucore builds I use. If you need a couple more builds for it, check out the last video on my channel. Another good combo here is the Epitaph and Glaive. Epitaph for the primer, and then you use the explosion on the glaive. And then last up, obviously, if you wanted just a straight up melee weapon to use with this, Harmony has been absolutely broken. But with that being said, that is the whole setup, all the weapons, the Archon Shards, Arcanes, and everything there is to know on how to turn Caliban into a solid weapons buff frame. So thank you guys for watching. If this video helped you out in any way, shape, or form, or if you try the build and you end up enjoying it, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Hopefully you have fun with this build. I've been finding it a great alternative to Saren. And with that being said, have a great day.